British Prime Minister Boris Johnson delivered a new defense, security, and foreign policy review in March that called for cuts in some existing Royal Air Force aircraft, while falling short in expectations for future purchases. It also called for cuts in manpower, a move former chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff Admiral Mike Mullen called, quote, a huge concern for Britain's ability to sustain deployment. The review did call for the Ministry of Defense to buy at least 48 Lockheed Martin F-35B fighters, the vertical takeoff and landing kind, but left the timeline for future purchases vague. There are still no plans to buy the conventional F-35A. The review also cuts the Royal Air Force's order to replace its Boeing E-3 Sentry surveillance aircraft with 3 Boeing Wedgetail E-7 airborne early warning control planes. That was a cut from the planned 5 aircraft. Defense News' Aaron Mehta recently spoke to the Air Chief Marshal, Sir Mike Wigston, about the Royal Air Force's future.
Well, Sir Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Defense News. I wanted to start with a big picture question. The United Kingdom came out with its integrated defense review a couple of weeks ago. That's essentially a holistic look across the UK defense, kind of laying out where decisions might be going in the near term and in the long-term future. There's been 3 separate defense-related reviews since 2010, and overall, the RAF capacity and mass has been diminished kind of over that period of time. In the most recent review, we've seen a couple of retirements of long-standing aircraft as well, and some critics have said that the retirement of some of these planes just are a sign that the RAF is actually losing some influence and power and might not be able to do its mission set going forward. Is that a concern for you going forward, or do you think some of that's overblown?
Aaron, well, thank you very much. And that's a great opening question. I'm delighted to be able to spend some time with you today talking about these issues. As you say, we've just had the integrated review, which was a threat-based assessment of the world and the United Kingdom's place on it. For the Royal Air Force in particular, the review gave us an opportunity to continue our modernisation programme. Some of the force structure changes that you alluded to in your opening question, Aaron, were is for the Royal Air Force to be modernising, to be retiring some of our older fleets nearing the end of their life cycle that have less utility or diminishing utility in a modern, digitally connected battle space. And it gives me the opportunity to invest in the future systems and the technology that is available to us now. So I've seen the integrated review, this year's review, as a fantastic opportunity for the Royal Air Force to be fit for the future and fit for the operating environment of the future and fit for the threats that we know we will face. And it gives me an opportunity to continue building our F-35 force, to recapitalize our airborne warning and control, to introduce and continue to build up our new transport aircraft, and to invest in the future combat air system, which will be a mix of uncrewed, remotely piloted, autonomous combat aircraft and piloted combat aircraft that we need on the front line, defending our skies, defending our allies from the late 2030s.
Do you see any potential issues coming down the pipeline of a lack of capacity as some of that trade-off has to happen to get those new technologies up and running?
When I talk about the future combat air system, and when I'm talking back in the UK, and I illustrate what I'm trying to say by talking about today's tactical unit of an 8-ship of Typhoon or an 8-ship of F-15s. Well, in future, that 8-ship actually might be the equivalent, might be 100 swarming drones, 10 uncrewed combat aircraft, loyal wingmen, and 2 piloted motherships like NGAD or Tempest, our NGAD equivalent. So the numbers and the calculus changes because of technology, and so I think there's an opportunity now for us to reframe that narrative of it's a choice between mass and technology. I think you can have both.
All right, well, Sir Mike, I want to run through a couple of the programs you hit on early on in the conversation, and that kind of came up in the integrated review. The first one I wanted to talk about was the Sentry, the E-3D aircraft. The UK had planned to purchase 5 of the E-7s. The integrated review cuts that purchase from 5 to 3. Do you imagine at some point wanting to take the E-7s and plus them back up to 5, or do you think 3 is going to be the number going forward?
Well, I think that's an option, and I certainly wouldn't rule it out. As it stands at the moment, the announcement and the plan is for 3, and of course we can make that work. And it's I go back to what I've just said. It's a enormously important step forward in terms of technology and in terms of what we need to do in the future battle space.
Another platform that's used by the US, UK, and a number of NATO allies is the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. The UK had initially announced it was going to buy 138 of the F-35B, the vertical takeoff and landing STOVL version. That's now been changed to saying, the UK has agreed to buy 48, and it will buy more than that, is what the integrated review says. It will increase its purchase over the 48 that have already been purchased. But it doesn't seem like that 138 number is quite as firm as it used to be. In your mind, is that still a target number? Do you expect that the UK to end up with less, or is this something that's maybe just kind of being misinterpreted incorrectly?
The reason we bought the F-35Bs was to pair it up with our 2 carriers, HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales. Well, they're going to be in service till the late 2060s at least. And so I need a fleet of aircraft that is going to last until that into that sort of time frame. So I'm taking a very steady view to how I build the fleet up, because I need these aircraft to last for that amount of time. And as the integrated review said, we are committing to growing the fleet, and we're going to continue to grow the fleet. And in that regard, nothing has changed. But I'm in no doubt, as we now established 2 squadrons, a training unit and a frontline squadron. I'm looking to establish a 3rd squadron, and I think I need at least 3, probably 4 squadrons worth of F-35Bs to work off the carriers. But as I say, this is still a force that we're growing, and we are going to be operating these platforms for potentially 50 years. So I'm not in any hurry to get to any figure, any final figure in the short term, and we will just make sure that we've got a force that's sustainable through the life of HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales.
Could you envision the UK ever buying the F-35A instead of the B? I know there was some talk about maybe reviewing that and making that consideration in the last couple of years.
Our focus right now is on building sufficient F-35Bs that we can operate from our 2 carriers and not be trying to do it with too few aircraft and too few people and putting unnecessary strain on the force. So my absolute focus as far as the F-35 JSF program at the moment is to continue to build my numbers of Bs until I've got a sustainable and usable force size to operate off the 2 carriers.
Oh, Sir Mike, last question for you, taking us back to kind of the big picture view here. Taking a look over the next decade, given what has been discussed in the review, given the technology trends that we see around the world, given the geopolitical trends we've seen around the world, over the next decade, in your mind, what's the single biggest challenge the RAF will have to deal with?
That profound change in our freedom of operation and our requirement to compete for control of the air is something that has to be the greatest concern for any air chief at the start in the early 2020s.
Well, Sir Mike, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you chatting with us, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, Aaron, it's been a great pleasure, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Aaron. When we come back, the latest in the plan to pull U.S. troops from Afghanistan and the Army's effort to field electronic vehicles for scouts.